All right. So we're going to talk about working capital analysis. And the way we're going to structure this is we're going to connect revenue, your receivables, so your cash, and your inventory from a cost perspective as well, wherever money kind of hits in the world of ERP. So prerequisite in our world is you have an ERP, you are a distribution manufacturing type company, and these things resonate with you. The way you are doing reporting, you may be an existing Zap customer or something you're thinking on, but for your perspective, Zap is a data warehouse that connects to your ERP data, transforms, and then you're able to build these reports and dashboards that you can make decisions on. Being a data warehouse means you can go literally in any direction with your data. Plus, it also means you're not limited to ERP. You can bring other elements of your business data to it. So we've got clients where finance is in ERP or finance system, and then inventory is somewhere else, and we've combined and put things together. All right. So let's move on. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to cover the three key things where money kind of falls into place within the ERP. So we're going to talk about revenue, profitability, margin. We're going to talk about cash, which is your APAR situation. And then we're going to talk about inventory, which is a cost, which is sitting. So inventory aging, and KPIs around that. And then we're going to bring it all together into the working capital triangle. I don't know if it's been coined yet, but I'm taking claim on that for sure. And on top of that, then like we do with our ERP reporting series, we're going to look at the role of AI, but this time it's slightly different. We're actually going to demo it. So we have started testing conversational AI on data models, data sets, and we are going to use Excel, Power BI to showcase that as well. All right. Okay, moving on. So what's the starting point? We're going to talk about revenue and margin. So what basically most ERPs show you is, okay, you got your revenue, that's your gross margin, and maybe margin by product or customer. Okay. But what generally tends to be missing in this data or data capture that you've done is what about the margin after rebates or freight, the net margin kind of level? What about margin related to channel or distribution? So you may have different ways that you sell the product, different channels or different brands and so on and so forth. How do you calculate that? Then how do you see a trend? Is there a volatility? Does seasonality come into it? You know, Christmas time is peak for you and other periods not, and so on and so forth. As an example, we've got a customer that does, it's in the fashion industry, but it does costumes. And the biggest period, or 70-80% of the money they make, is during Halloween. It is the one period which is most important to their business across US and UK. And they've built a business. I mean, it's a multi-million dollar business. They've built around it, but everything kind of congregates towards that, and everything else is like building towards that. Um, then what about slow moving products? And this is where inventory aging and so on and so forth will come into it. But what is the impact of margin for something like that? And of course, cost absorption if you need to do it. So revenue can grow while cash weakens. This is when the collection element comes in. Margin can look stable while working capital deteriorates. And this is the part we will be actually showcasing during the demo session, where revenue's great, margin is amazing and steady, but working capital may or may not be. Okay. Now let's look at the cash side of things. So AR, profit does not include cash. I think anyone who spent even 5 minutes in collections or invoices not being paid and so on and so forth knows exactly what this means. Revenue does not mean money in the bank account. Okay. And I think pretty much all of us have gone through that. So generally what happens is, revenue is growing, AR starts to grow as well. Sometimes there are extended payment terms, or there's sometimes risk associated with a few customers because they either are your biggest customer but their expectation is they need more time to pay, or they sometimes demand better cash flow scenarios with you. I know we have one or two customers who do that, and it's hard sometimes to do that. Then maybe some invoices which are disputed or delayed. Um, and again, profitable customers, you get the best margin, you manage to get the best price, but they want to pay slowly. It's like the negotiation tactic, which is bigger, the revenue or the time I take to pay you. Um, so what should you be tracking? And this is one of the things we will be showcasing here. Is with respect to margin, we'll be talking about daily sales outstanding. So DSO is an industry standard KPI. That's what we'll be talking about it. What customers erode, kind of cash velocity. So cash moving in, moving out, moving in. More importantly here, considering AR, which customers actually impact that of not coming in timely. And the actual kind of understanding of I've got this margin that needs to come in the result of cash in my bank account to be used. So working capital again, and where is that and when is that? Okay. So if I looked at some key KPIs, AR days, DSO is definitely one of those, cash to cash or cash conversion cycle, and payment behavior, like who pays on time. I mean, I don't know about you. I have a 2, 3 clients who I wish paid on time, but are consistent with paying, certain days late on a regular basis. Okay, so that's the cash or AR lens of it. The third I'm going to look at is inventory, and this is the scenario we're going to play here. Revenue margins great, cash is coming in time, but inventory is the silent cash drain. So we will be focusing on that, and we'll show you that complete scenario today. But essentially, it's about high margin SKUs, which is sitting on the shelf. And I think anyone who's worked in or is working in a business with stock, nobody wants stock lying there. The whole concept of just in time, everybody loves and would like everything to work perfectly, so everything is just in time, but it obviously is not for various reasons and the type of businesses and industries and structures you have. But if your stock is sitting on the shelf, and if it is sitting for a longer period, it is a huge problem and it is a cash drain. So we'll be talking about that through the use of ZapBI. Safety stock, this is where people put in, I just want to hold, 50 of these in my, because I just feel this new deal will come through, or I believe my gut tells me my forecast is we will sell 20% more next month. Forecasts obviously are it's like getting forecasts right is probably the hardest part in anyone's job, I believe. If you're getting it that right on a regular basis, well, kudos to you, or you're probably not aiming high enough, because generally you shouldn't be getting your forecast right. Anyways, joking aside. But then there's obsolete inventory. You've stopped selling that stock. You've moved on. It's a different version of the previous last year version of it. What do you do with that stock? Production has issues, and that causes stock to remain on the shelf. Um, Demand visibility. I think if any manufacturing or distribution business says, I know what my demand is 100%, again, kudos to you. But generally, that is not the case. And again, that impacts what you order and how much you order. What you should be uh, tracking, and this is the KPI we will be focusing on, which SKUs actually tie up your working capital. That's the critical part. I'm looking at revenue, cash, and stock, which is a cost, which is stalling my money to come back into the business and be potentially used again in the business and again and again. So the whole concept of working capital. Which products look profitable but turn slowly? So I may have a stock which has 60% margin, but it's sitting on my shelf, doesn't make me money. Um, how much margin is trapped in aging inventory? I mean, some of these are just fantastic. Each one of them on its own can be a KPI to look into detail and find value immediately from it. Okay, and essentially, what is the real cost of carrying cost? But inventory improves service levels, but destroys cash flow, when unmanaged. And this is specifically what we will be focusing on through this scenario with revenue, cash, and inventory. Okay. So I wanted to call it the Holy Trinity. Didn't feel like it, but working capital triangle seems to have a nice ring to it. So yeah, like I said, I'm coining this. Margin's healthy, but cash is tight, and that's the scenario we're going to play for you using Zap BI. So you've got revenue margin, you've got cash with your AR and possibly AP coming into the mix as well. And then you have inventory where your capital is locked. So you're looking at days sales outstanding, you're looking at inventory days, you're looking at gross margin, but looking at ways of what can improve my working capital situation where I can literally get hands on that working capital to use in my business to further growth, further investment, diversification, whatever you want, but getting hands on to that working capital and managing it on a consistent basis. All right. Lastly, how AI becomes practical. And like I said, we used to talk about prompts. We used to talk about where elements we see AI coming into it. Now we're going to start showing this year onwards. And on this webinar, we will do as well. Okay. So what can AI do? It can predict slow paying customers. I think if I put this on my AR situation and it looked at my 12 months of invoices being paid, I'm sure it'll highlight these two customers I keep thinking about. Um, Identify margin erosion patterns. So I've got a stock with high margin and suddenly I start selling more of that because I have discounted it, or for whatever reason I've signed a contract which requires me to sell it at a considerably low margin and so on and so forth. So thinking about those terms, so revenue terms, because margin is what I make. Um, Aging risks. So looking at the pattern, looking at the demand, which is there currently, and trends previously, which may potentially tell me this could be the demand. At what days it becomes a risk that potentially it'll sit on my shelf and not actually be, stock moved out. Detect anomalies in working capital movements. And again, this is related to KPIs, and within those KPIs, can there be identification of anomalies there? So something quite interesting, and some of it we're going to talk about while doing the demonstration. One thing to remember, and I'm hoping the more this whole noise around AI continues, everyone starts to realize that without clean, structured, governed data, AI can't work. It just cannot work. So I hope you are. I'm sure everybody's playing out, playing with a few tools and testing stuff, um, and realizing if your data is pretty poor, if it is not structured. So transactions are wrong, transactions are right, but there is no structure to it. You will never get AI to work. Okay. One thing, and that's why, key things to understand what AI cannot do. It can't fix, disconnected product hierarchies. If your costing layers are mismatched, if inconsistent logic that you're using in calculations of margin, as an example, it can't understand that. So again, it has to be clean data, structured data, and governed data. Okay, great. So let me move to stop sharing. David, the floor is yours, man.
Super. Thank you. And thank you, Rocket, for the introduction. And thanks, everyone, for your patience. It was a bit stressful the last couple of minutes. But, well, I'm really excited to be part of this webinar where we're going to be talking about real world problems that many of us face on a daily basis, which is margin looking fine, but the cash is feeling a little bit tight. And we have built this set of dashboards because that's something that many of you have asked in the past, and we have built this report. So I really, really hope that you enjoy it. And just to remind you that this is your webinar series. If there is any topic of your interest, or if there is anything that you would like us to cover, please write it down in the chat box, and we will be more than happy to include it in the future. So my goal of this demo is not just to show you the numbers, but let's dive in into the problem. Let's try to uncover the root causes. I want you to take from this webinar to take ideas on how to build some dashboards if you are an existing Zap customers, and also to learn some of the frameworks that we are using to analyze the data and how we are drilling down into the data. And how you can actually better utilize Zap. We're going to talk you through some of the features that we have, which I'm sure some of you have not seen as yet. So yeah, right. So without any further ado, let's dive into the problem, and let's start with something that every leadership teams looks at first, which is the margin, right? And we can all report in margin. That's something that seems quite simple. That's easy. The problem is not analyzing the margin, but it's analyzing it on its own, isolated, because we are missing the full story, right? So let's just take a look at this dashboard, and let's just analyze a little bit the charts that we have here. And we can get a very quick snapshot about how the margin is performing in this company. And we can see that although in January, my margin is dropping, it dropped from December. I mean, that can be quite obvious. It's January. We are just starting the year. And we are below the target in both in the amounts and in the percentages. We can see that we are almost every month from the history above target. So the margin seems to be actually quite healthy. Also, my margin target for this specific, in terms of amounts, it's 5,000 K, which I'm almost above, apart from June 2025 and January 2026. So it seems to be good. And also in terms of percentages, it seems quite healthy. We are almost always above the 50%, which is the target for this database. So we can see that we are almost always above the target, and we are almost always, and the trend seems to be slightly decreasing. Mainly that can be explained due to the January that our sales got slow. But if we stop here, and this is, the main narrative of this topic, if we stop here, we would assume that the performance is healthy, right? But the problem is that traditional margin analysis, like this one we're analyzing here, are isolated. And when they are isolated, they can actually hide business reality, right? So when reports are built from isolated queries or from isolated tables or isolated spreadsheets, when there's manual work, manual reconciliations, then the data is disconnected from the rest of the business, right? And it's not that these numbers are wrong. Actually, these numbers are correct. The numbers seems to be fine. But it is that the analysis, it's incomplete, right? So to get the complete picture, we need to pull data, right, from different places, right? From where? Well, from ledgers, from sub ledgers, and even Excel data sources, right, where we might have the budgets or the targets. So we need a fuller picture, but we also need to trust in this data. And to trust those numbers, to make those connections, that's where we need a data warehouse that can pull data from different places, from the general ledger, and can link that with the different sub-ledgers, like the accounts receivables or the sales or the inventory, to try to understand where the cash is actually tied. So the goal, the whole purpose of that data warehouse is to have one single source of truth where we can combine, information from different places, where we can have the same dimensions in the same periods, and focus on the problem. So now going back into the problem, the margin looks fine, but my business is feeling that we have the cash is feeling tight, right? And that's where the problem is actually sitting. Now, in this dashboard, that's where the story starts changing. And here is where we start analyzing. When we say that the cash feels tight, it usually means that the cash is getting tight, it's getting stuck somewhere. And in this dashboard, I'm adding two additional metrics to analyze this problem. So we are adding the working capital, which is where I'm actually hovering my mouse, which this is basically telling us how much cash is tied up in the day-to-day daily activities, right? Uh, and the second one that I'm actually adding here is the cash to cash cycle, which is also called CCC, which is basically analyzing how fast am I turning my sales into cash. So these two metrics will allow me to understand, okay, my margin is fine, but why am I getting where is that contradiction, right? Why is my cash feeling tight? So we already analyzed the margin. That's something that we already saw. We saw that it's healthy in terms of amounts. We also saw that it's healthy in terms of percentages. However, when I concentrate my attention on this working capital, I will see that actually it's quite high compared to my margin. So I have 34,000 K in the month of January, which is high. But what it's worrying is that if we see and we compare this metric against February 2025, we can see that there is a drastic increase in this working capital. It's almost 6 times more, 600% than the original. So that's something that it's quite worrying, or I'm quite concerned about that. Now, as a side note, an increase in the working capital isn't always bad because it can represent growth. It might be that we are selling more. It might be that we are getting more accounts receivables and more inventory naturally because we are selling more. So that can be a positive metric. However, it can show also a lot of inefficiencies. It can show that the collections are actually slower. It can actually show that the inventory is staying longer, or we are overbuying, we have overstock, right? Or it might be that we have a funding problem, that we are paying our suppliers faster, and that's the reason why the working capital is increasing. So to understand more what are the details of this problem that we have here, let's jump to the next chart where we have the cash to cash cycle. And as we mentioned before, this is analyzing how fast we turned these sales into cash. So basically, this is summing three metrics. This has the day sales outstanding, which also known as DSO, which basically is calculating the average number of days that it takes us to collect the cash. So how fast are we converting those sales into cash, right? The days inventory, which is the DIO here, and it's the average number of days that our products are staying in the inventory, so they are stocked before being sold. And then the days payable outstanding, which is basically the same, but now on the supplier side, how long it's taking us to pay the suppliers. So the cash to cash cycle here, and this is reinforcing the data that we have here in the working capital, the cash to cash cycle here, it's 131 days. So we are way above the target, which is 75 days. And actually it increased by 88 days. So, wow, that's something bad, right? It has increased a lot. So something is happening. We need to try to uncover what is the problem. And that usually means one simple thing. The cash is being locked inside the business. It's aligned with the working capital. So maybe it's staying in the receivables. Maybe it's taking us longer to collect the money, or maybe it's staying longer in the inventory, right? So in the following chart below, we can see the days sales outstanding, the days payable outstanding, and the days inventory. So we can see that it seems from this chart that the biggest contribution might be the inventory. It seems like the DPO and the DSO are quite the same. So it can be that that the problem sits more within the inventory, right? So going back into to our narrative, so actually we are confirming the thesis of this webinar. We can see actually that profit looks indeed healthy. However, the cash is getting trapped in the working capital, and also the cash to cash cycle is quite high. So let's dive in to understand why. Let's try to understand why and where the cash is getting trapped. So this is why we're going to focus on the cash to cash cycle to understand and to uncover what are the reasons and where the cash is getting stuck. So, all right, let's drill down, and we here see the summary of the same information that we saw. You can see that a very nice feature that we have here in Zap is that we can create subscriptions to track our metrics, to track all of these KPIs. So whenever a metric is above or below the target, in this case it's 75, we can create workflows that automatically can send me a notification that allow me to understand what are the reasons behind, in this case, my cash to cash cycle being above my target, right? So we see that the cash to cash cycle is high, as we discussed before. This means that the cash is converting much slower than it should. In simple terms, this means that we are funding the business for longer, right? So it takes us much more time to get the money back. Now, in the chart that we have below, remember that we analyzed the formula, which is the cash to cash cycle is the daily sales outstanding, the inventory minus the days payable outstanding. So we can actually conclude that the problem seems to be much more on the inventory, right? We can see that the sales and the payables, the days quite are similar, 46 compared to the 55, so they are quite the same. However, the inventory is the one that is giving us a big increase here. Now, throughout the last sessions, throughout the last webinars that we have been working, I have shown you some of the frameworks that I used to create this dashboard, which is using the MISI framework, which was developed by McKinsey, which is breaking down the problems into, or the KPIs into its components. And that's what we are going to be doing here. So the gray area is the problem, and all of these squares is where we are going to be analyzing now the collections, the inventory, and the payables. Now, if we focus on these, let's not make assumptions, and let's analyze this 46 DCO. Let's actually analyze if it's how it's performing. So as we discussed before, the DCO, it's telling us how long customers take to pay. So this seems to be fine, 45 days. Actually, if I expand this chart, let me just maximize this. I can see that it has been increasing, but there's a decline in the month of January. So it's actually 43 days less than the previous months. So we can get a conclusion that this is good. The trend is slightly increasing, nothing to worry about. So yeah, there's a decrease in terms of the previous month. So we are improving in terms of collection. Now, in terms of the amounts, I mean, how relevant is that to the business? We can see that account receivables, it's 24,000K with an overdue amount of only 149. So that seems to be quite healthy, right? AR exists, an overdue amount exists, yes, but that's not the main part of the story. And the only concern that I have here, and maybe we need to keep eye for another analysis, is that part of this, of what we have overdue, it's very aged. We have numbers that are more than 121 days. So maybe this collection that we have here, we're not going to ever recover in the future, right? So this supports the same theory that we have here, where the day sales outstanding has improved and the AR is not the biggest of our concern. Now, I want to highlight here that we are combining here information from ledger and subledger. So we have here information that is coming from the accounts receivables module and another one that is coming from the general ledger module. So this is allowing us to get a much more complete picture of the business. Now, let's focus on the days payable outstanding. And in here, we have 53 days, okay, 55, sorry, days. And basically, it's down by 88 days compared to the previous month. This can be slightly concerned. This means that we are paying the suppliers faster, which is also putting more pressure on our cash. But we see that there is an increase from February to January, so that might not be very, very concerning. It's important to keep an eye on it, but it's not the most concerning piece. Now, when we see the balances, also the amount is small, lower than my receivables. The overdue amount, it's not that high, it's just 2.7 million. So that's not very important. Just since the TPO dropped, we are suggesting that we are paying faster, but it doesn't seem to be the main problem. But now, let's concentrate our attention on the inventory days outstanding. This is where the problem seems to be getting. So this is a big red flag. We have 141 days in my days inventory outstanding, and it has increased by 42 days compared to the previous month. So this is a very, very red flag. The inventory valuation is 42. If I see the chart below, the inventory valuation is 42,000. And what it's also concerning here is that from this 42,000%, 7.5 million has an aging in the inventory more than 120 days. So that represents over 18% of my whole inventory valuation. So that means that the cash is sitting on the shelf, and this is matching with the earlier signal that my days inventory outstanding are high. So if we analyze here again where the cash is stock, the answer from this dashboard is clear. The inventory is the main problem, right? We have a DIO of 141 and 18% of my inventory is more than 120 days. The receivables and the payables are kind of the same. They're kind of cushioning each other, so that shouldn't be part of the problem. But also something that is interesting here, see that here I have 141 days, but this chart is also showing me that the aged amount, this 18%, is more than 121 days. So just by looking at this is suggesting me that part of the inventory should be even much older than 141 days, right? So now, to uncover this problem, let's drill down to uncover which are the items that are affecting the inventory and the days in inventory. Super. Okay, so now we can see where the cash is being trapped, and now we can see where we can concentrate our attention first, right? So in this dashboard, again, we're using the MISI framework. So now we're thinking about the inventory, the days in inventory, which to calculate that metric, we need to have the cost of sales, and we need to have also the inventory valuation, and that's allowing us to understand what are the days that are brought states in inventory. So we start with the most important metrics on the right-hand side. We start with the inventory valuation, which in this case is 3,077K. We have our gross margin, and here I have an average days in inventory. Now we're drilling from the general ledger where we were getting all those metrics, and now we're going into the inventory. We're analyzing the information by items. So we are analyzing now the sub ledgers. That's the reason why there's a small discrepancy in the number of days. That might be that the period hasn't yet been closed, or that we need to do some reconciliations. But in short, we are getting the same picture of where the numbers might be stocked. Now, we start with some top charts just to tell us in a very short snapshot which are the top 10 items in terms of inventory. And remember that the conversation here was, why is if my margin is okay, I'm having some issues with the cash flow. So that's the reason why we are combining this with the margin to try to contrast and find discrepancies between the margin and find discrepancies with the cash. So this will allow us to understand, okay, I might be getting a lot of margin from this product, but it's actually affecting my cash conversion, right? And finally, in the right-hand side, I have the most problematic items, which are the items that has the highest, much more days in inventory, right? Okay, so just let me just refresh, go back. It kind of makes the... There we go. Now, where I want us to concentrate more our attention is in this bubble chart that I have on the left-hand side of the screen, where the x-axis is telling us what are the days in inventory, right? So these are the number of days that I have in inventory. Now, here I might, I think I should have added more metrics here so we could see more clearly. And then on the y-axis, we have the margin percentage, where the size of the value represents the inventory valuation. Now, let's become here very, very critical. And if I drill down into these specifics, I have created here 4 different categories to classify the inventory. So on the left-hand side, what we have here, we have items where we have fast moving, right? They are staying less time in the inventory, and they have high profit. So these are the healthy performance, which in this case I have very few. Maybe this item, it's a healthy performer, which is the laser printer. Now, on the right-hand side of the screen, we have items that has a high profit, but they actually stay for a long period of time in the inventory. So these are a profit trap, right? Yes, they create profit, but it takes quite a lot to move that inventory. And that's where we might require to concentrate our attention the most, because then we have low margin items, but they are moving fast. So these are the volume products. We sell quite a lot. The margin is low, and we are getting the cash fast. And finally, the items that we have on this quadrant on the right-hand side of the screen, these have low margin, right? So they are quite low in margin, and also they are stock, so they are cash killers. In this case, we don't identify any cash killers, but we have some items that has actually, this is where the problem is sitting, right? We can see that we have a big portion of our products that are driving a lot of revenue, but these same products are affecting quite a lot our cash. So on the right-hand side now, we can see the information on a more detailed level, on a table level, where I can see the products. We can see, for example, in this case, that this product, which, let me scroll to the left, we can see here that all of these products from 297 days upwards, I have here a red flag, which means that I'm quite concerned about these products because these are staying longer. Then I have created another flag from 300 to 200 days, which these are also products that I need to keep an eye on them. And then all the products that I consider to be healthy in terms of aging, right? So what I see here is that from these red performers, this product, which is the win-based spreadsheet, which is the DIS007, seems to be my top item in terms of margin. This is one of the items that it's basically affecting me the most, right? Yes, it's giving me good margin. It represents an interesting cost of sale. The gross margin percentage is actually quite healthy, 52%, but 315 days this product is staying in the inventory. Right? So it's sitting in inventory, it's aging. So based on our business strategy, based on our business model, we can start defining strategies to enhance this metric. Maybe we can offer some discounts, maybe we can sacrifice some margin to move the product faster. We need now to start drilling down and understand, how many products we have sold in terms of quantities. And we can always go to the lowest level of retail. I actually haven't tested this out. I'm going to do it right now for the first time. But if I click on this metric, I can even go to the lowest level of retail. And actually it worked, where I can see the invoice or the inventory transactions itself to see how these numbers are being built up. So it's having that capability to go from a very isolated report where we were analyzing the margin by itself, being able to then drill down to uncover different metrics and add cash KPIs as a working capital and a cash to cash cycle, and being able to go to the lowest level of retail to uncover the problems, right? So now I have now analyzed and realized where the problem is sitting in terms of inventory, right? So from there, I can start defining the strategies. Now, let's just drill through the days payable outstanding, the customers, the days sales outstanding, to try to understand if there is any problem with the collection, right? And for this exercise, I haven't built a dashboard by itself. I just have simply created a table that contains the sales, the credit amount, the amounts receivables, the gross profit, the gross margin percentage, and the daily sales outstanding, right? So dashboards are great for executives, but financial teams and many people use Excel, they love Excel. So here, the key here is to use the same governed data, the same source of truth in a report that we can actually analyze in Excel. So here I want to show you the Excel add-in feature. So let me just collapse the screen. And let me show you now Excel. So can you, Rohit, confirm with me if you can see Excel file?
Yes, I can.
Super.
Got
Perfect.
8 minutes to go, okay?
Yeah. So here, let me just close the Copilot. So as I mentioned, many times we would like to analyze information in Excel. This is an Excel Live add-in feature that we have, where we are basically mirroring that same report that I showed you. Here we have the sales grade, sales, receivables amount, gross profit amount, and this DSO, which is the exact same report that I have here, right? It's just being mirrored in Excel. Now, one of the topics that we want to talk about is AI, right? And this is where we can use and we can leverage some of the technologies such as a Copilot that we have here. I'm going to start asking actually some questions. So the key here, and something that I want to highlight here, and I want you to stay with it, the key here is that we are all analyzing the same governed data that exists within the data warehouse, right? So again, here we have information from account receivables, we have information from the gross profit, which comes from the sales, and comes from, we have also the cost of sales. So we have all that information that comes from different modules. Now, once we have it in Excel, we can start interacting. I can use Copilot to ask questions. So here I already made some questions before starting the webinar. For example, here I'm going to write, identify the top 10 customers with the highest receivable amount and summarize the risk. I'm going to click on this. And this is basically reviewing the data, and it's basically summarizing information with me. So it says, based on the data, the customer cash trap, these are the 10 customers with the highest receivable amount, and concise risk summaries. So I get here the 10, and then I have the different summaries that I identify. Here we have even get some conclusions. Now we can get what if scenarios using AI. Let's say, hey, estimate how much cash it could be released. So we are now creating the strategies, right? Cash could be released if we reduce the daily sales outstanding by 20 days for the 5 customers, only the 5 customers. So it's creating the analysis. In this case, it's even creating a report. I have here this table, which this is the scenario that it's creating. This is the receivable amount, the daily sales outstanding, and this is the estimated cash released if we make that improvement. I can add this even to a new sheet. So again, all of these reports that we're creating are based on the SAP reports, right? They were already analyzed. And then I'm just going to write one last query. Let's say that I want to now, let's create a short CFO ready summary that shows what are the actions need to be prioritized. So the whole idea is to convert data into insights and to convert those insights into actions. And this is what's happening here. We are converting all of this into insights. So these are the next things that we can do. And the last thing, just to conclude, we show here the cash trap. Now I want to show you something quite nice as well. And we can use AI with Excel, right? I showed it using Copilot. But nothing is stopping us to use this on Power BI as well. And actually, the prompt that you see here, this is a prompt that and I'm not going to do it right now just because we are running out of time. But I literally copied and pasted this prompt, which is create a new Power BI report named working capital in Copilot. I want you to use the following measures: current assets, liabilities, working capital. I want you to use these segmentations, companies. I want you to have this layout and some formatting rules, right? So measures, slices. And the reason why this is working so nicely is because in the data warehouse, we have already those ingredients. So I literally used Copilot. I copied and pasted that prompt here. And within a matter of minutes, maybe 5 minutes or so, it was able to reproduce this report that I'm showing you with you right now, where I have a working capital report, and I also have a cash to cash cycle report. So we are leveraging the AI, right? But in order for AI to exist, there needs to exist a data warehouse that we trust. So just to close for today's session, the objective today was not just to look at margin, but to understand what were the hidden traps in cash. We review the working capital, we review the cash to cash cycle, we apply the MISI framework introduced by McKinsey to try to break down the problem into its logical pieces, into procurement, sales, inventory. And we concluded that the margin is healthy indeed, but part of the problem is sitting much more with inventory. So we have a velocity problem. And from there, we need to just reduce, clean up, stop buying more or sell down, lower the prices, discounts, write-offs, and fix the root causes. Maybe I had just forecasting problems. So this is what I have planned for today's session. I hope that you have enjoyed the content of this webinar. I hope you have taken some new ways of analyzing the data in our platform in SAP. So if there are any questions, please feel free to bring them on.
Great. Thanks, David. You may want to stop sharing your screen. But yeah, thank you, guys. I hope you enjoy that. Just gonna remove it from the stream. Yeah, that's better. Hope you guys enjoy that session. I don't know if it was easy to understand or slightly technical or too much detail. Would love some feedback on the chat, please. Because we want to make sure people get value from it. That's why, as you can see, we don't talk much about Zap and how great we are or any of that stuff. What's important to us is what outcomes you can get when you did get your data right, and then what portal KPIs you can use to make business decisions. So that's the aim from this. David obviously forgot to share that when he put the prompt in Copilot and Power BI, he bombed our daily expense that we are allowed on Fabric by a couple of $100. So he didn't mention that. But yeah, it's been very interesting testing Copilot on Power BI with the semantic data models. You can literally talk to the data and ask it to build your reports, which is pretty crazy. So we are testing, but yeah, the costs with Fabric are a little out of hand at the moment, and Microsoft being Microsoft, it's not very easy to understand how these things work. So we're just treading carefully, understanding things before um, we start opening this up to our existing customers or new prospects where there is an interest in Power BI, there is an interest in getting Copilot on top of that, and then we can, run these tests with them. So quite a few exciting things happening at the moment. But yeah, looking at the chat, uh, yeah, got a comment. It's doable, but one got to play with it often to get used to it. I'm not sure you're referring to Fabric, Power BI, or what David just demonstrated on Zap BI and Excel and stuff. Um, but if you're playing around with Fabric, I want to talk to you because I want to understand how much money are you pouring into it, because that thing feels like a pit where you continuously money has to be put in to push the boundaries of it. But yeah, I mean, it is very powerful, that thing. Very, very powerful. But yeah, if you have the money, yeah, definitely. Okay, I'm going to give it one more minute. We've gone over, so I'm going to give it one more minute for any questions to come through. On Excel, yes, I agree. Excel actually is good one because Copilot there is coming from your Outlook license or the what do you call the E3, E5 license that you buy from Microsoft. So the whole pool of Outlook and PowerPoint and Excel and so on and so forth. So that Copilot is good. One extra piece which we are developing. So right now with that Copilot, you can interact with a report that you built on Excel. We are building where you can talk to the pivot table or the cube that you get in Excel through us. So you can go deeper, just a bit like we did with Power BI. Hopefully not bombing our daily expense allowance, David. But yeah, need to control that a little bit. Okay, guys, we're 2 minutes over. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed it. Apologies again for the delay in our audio and systems, but I hope you enjoyed it. Would love to hear feedback, guys. I know some of the people on the call, so would love to hear your feedback. Would hear ideas you want us to try using ARP data or a complex report you are struggling to build. Tell us. We'll see if we can turn that into a topic and run with that on these sessions. We do this on a monthly basis, and we want to continue doing that. Again, thank you guys. Thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.